So today we will be learning about part 6, the states, which covers articles 152 to 237. So the topics that we will be covering today, the governor, chief minister, and his council of ministers, the state legislature, the state legislative assembly, and the state legislative council, and the high court, the advocate general, and subordinate courts like the district court, family courts, the POSCO court, and so forth. Okay. Now this is the state government at a glance. Just in the same way that we studied about the executive, legislature, and judiciary of the central government, who are the members of the executive in the center. We had the president, we had the prime minister and his council of ministers, and the attorney general of India. And in the legislature, we had the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. In the state, we have the legislative assembly, we have the legislative council. In Nagaland, we do not have the legislative council. Okay, it is only present in few states, but we will be learning about that as well. Its legislative council is equal to Rajya Sabha, and legislative assembly is equal to Lok Sabha. Both perform the same functions. Legislative assembly is the assembly that we have, and we will also be learning why we do not have a legislative council. And in the judiciary, we have the high court, which is equivalent, which is similar to the Supreme Court, and then we have the subordinate courts, which are the district court and the POSCO court, family courts, and so forth. We will be learning about all types of courts today. Now, if you take a look at the governor, he is the constitutional head of the state. Just in the same way that the president is the constitutional head of the country, the governor is the constitutional head of the state, which means all executive actions are taken in the name of the governor, not the chief minister. Every act passed, every budget introduced will contain the recommendation, the signature of the governor. Everything is passed in the name of the governor. Okay, in the state, everything is passed in the name of the governor. The executive authority is vested in the governor. Now, the actual executive authority, all of you know that it's the chief minister, right? But the official, the nominal executive authority is vested in the governor, okay? He acts on the aid and advice of the council of ministers. Now, there was a judgment decades ago. We will be learning about the judgment later on. And in that judgment, the Supreme Court clarified that the governor cannot act based on his own, he cannot misuse his discretionary powers. As much as possible, he must act on the aid and advice of the council of ministers. Okay, he represents the union in the state, which means he is appointed by the president. Okay, there's no specific election for the governor. It is up to the president, who appoints the governor on the advice of the council of ministers of the union government. Okay, the Modi and his council of ministers will recommend individuals to serve as governor, and the governor is appointed by the president on the advice of the council of ministers. So there's no specific election for the governor. Always remember that there's election for the president, the vice president, but there is no election for the governor. It is directly appointed by the union in the state to represent the union and appointed by the president. He is the constitutional head, the executive authority, aid and advice, union representative, presidential appointee. Never forget these 5 points. These are the 5 points that you can elaborate on when they ask you about the powers and functions, about the position of the governor and its powers and functions. Now, the governor is the nominal executive, while the chief minister is the real executive. Similarly, in the center, the president is the nominal executive, while the prime minister is the real executive. Now, appointment, qualifications, and term of the governor. As you can see, in the appointment, he is appointed by the president of India. Okay, that's the only thing you need to know. Qualification, he must be a citizen of India. Minimum age is 35 years, just in the same way the president is 35 years. To be a president, you must be 35 years of age. To be a member of Rajya Sabha, 30 years of age. Legislative Council, 30 years of age. Legislative Assembly 25, Lok Sabha 25. Do not forget that. And terms and oath, again, the third point within the qualification bracket, he must not hold any house of profit. Okay, he should not have any business establishment, anything that generates profit for him. Okay, the governor must be free, just in the same way the president must be free of any private indulgence for the purpose of financial profit. Now, terms and oath, 5 years is his term. He will serve for 5 years. And if he could be reappointed again indefinitely, there's no limit to how many times a person can be a governor. We know about S.C. Jammeh, right? He was a governor of Odisha, he was a governor of Maharashtra, and so forth. Now, he is eligible for reappointment. The oath, it is administered by the Chief Justice of the High Court. Okay? Oath-taking ceremony of the governor will be administered by the Chief Justice of the High Court, whereas the oath-taking ceremony of the President is administered by the Supreme Court. These are the powers of the governor. He has executive power, he has legislative power, he has financial power, he has judicial power, he has discretionary power. These powers are very similar to the powers of the President of India. And however, one exam tip that I mentioned is most powers are exercised on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, except certain discretionary powers. Okay, we will be studying one by one. Executive powers of the governor. Executive, enforce. He appoints the chief minister. He appoints other ministers on the advice of the chief minister. You can see that when the NDPP party won the election in the recent election of 2023, Nifiri was appointed by the governor, and so where is Council of Ministers appointed by the governor. Okay, he appoints the Advocate General. The governor will appoint the Advocate General, which is similar to the Attorney General of India. Okay, the Advocate General will submit its report and will also be the legal advisor to the government of Nagaland. Okay, and for the Comptroller and Auditor General in the center, we have Accountant General, AG Office. We always call it, right, AG Colony, AG Office. That's the place where the AG Office is, the office of the Accountant General. Okay, even us, our department, the Department of Treasures and Accounts, we have to submit everything to the AG, Accountant General, and then the Accountant General will submit the report to the central government about the salaries drawn, about the projects and schemes, and the amount of money invested in it. Everything is submitted by the Treasures and Accounts Department, which is our department. Our department is the department in the state that handles audit, accounting, and treasury. Okay, so we will submit the report to the Accountant General, and the Accountant General will submit its report to the center, which means Comptroller and Auditor General. Now, for the Advocate General, he is the legal advisor. Okay, Advocate General. Who is the equivalent of Advocate General in the center? Attorney General of India, AGI. Okay, AGI. So he will just in the same way the AGI is a legal advisor to the central government, the Advocate General is a legal advisor to the state government. Okay, if we were to RDI lagay dishe against the Ministry of against the Health and Family Welfare Ministry, lagay dishe RDI lagay dishe. Now there's a case going on. Let's say there's a case going on in the Kohima bench, Guwahati High Court. It is the Advocate General that will represent the government. Okay, every time there's a case against the government, it is the Advocate General that handles all the issues related to the state government. Now he appoints the chairman and members of the State Public Service Commission, NPSC, NSSP, Chairman. Kutuan so be appoint grid governor ba. You must understand that it is the governor that appoints them. It also makes key constitutional appointments as provided by law, which we will study later. Now, this is the legislative powers of the governor. In the center as well, we have the president. Just in the same way, the president summons, prorogues, and dissolves the Indian Parliament. The governor also summons, prorogues, and dissolves the Legislative Assembly. Okay. Now there's a slight reminder about prorogation and adjournment. We talked about adjournment. The adjournment power is vested in the hands of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha or the Chairman of Rajya Sabha. They can either they can adjourn, which means if there's a sitting, if there's a meeting, and then the meeting is let's say paused for some few hours, some few days, or a few weeks, it means adjournment. Okay, and it is if the adjournment, if there's no specific time given up to how much the meeting has been paused, it means adjournment sine die. Okay, sine die, SINEDIE, adjournment sine die, which means the speaker stops the meeting for an unknown time. Now prorogation is very similar, but prorogation though officially every sitting close to a final na budget session, where the budget session, where the winter session, the session officially close grado, it is the president that does it. And in the same way, in the state, it is the governor. Okay, governor that has a power of prorogation. He summons the sitting, official sitting, and then he prorogues the official sitting. Budget session, let's say budget session, start gradam de summon grado, governor ba summon gruo, and then whatever meeting they're having, maju de post kan tagile adjournment going, and then time limit na dile do adjournment sine die. And last day officially close wadam de, it is called prorogation. Okay, and it is the governor that does it. He summons and then he prorogues. And maju de do, the speaker can adjourn in different ways. If it's just adjournment, time limit tigina say after 2 days we will again sit for the same meeting for the same topic. But if the speaker says time to najini, we won't say the time limit night, which means adjournment sine die. It's very similar to prorogation because adjournment sine die means indefinite period, equal time limit night. So last day though prorogation do hui jai. Okay, so which is why people say that adjournment sine die is the same as prorogation. Sine die the time limit na de to session to complete hui jai, khatam hui jai, automatically prorogation aa jai, officially close for the governor ba. But these are two very different terms. Okay, adjournment and prorogation. Adjournment sine die and prorogation are very two different terms. Sine die though, adjournment sine die though, it's a speaker that does it. Adjournment and prorogation means it is the governor that does it. Now, summons, prorogues, and dissolves the Legislative Assembly. Dissolution every time after the end of the 5-year term, complete dissolution. Okay, complete dissolution. It brings an end to the tenure of the Legislative Assembly. Dissolution, he dissolves the Legislative Assembly, and then the new election is held, and then again he appoints the new government. And he addresses the first session after every general election. It is very obvious, right? First session. It's kind of like inauguration ceremony and so forth. Okay, the first session. He nominates one member of the Anglo-Indian community historically. Now, this continued by the 104th Amendment. You don't need to know this, but in case you guys are reading old books, I mentioned that as well. Now it is discontinued by the 104th Constitutional Amendment. So there is no nomination of one member of Anglo-Indian community, okay, by the governor. So just in case apni kan purana kitab kan puri ase gole do koi gina mention condition. Now he also gives assent to bills. Every bill in the state requires the assent of the governor. Okay, never forget that. Just in the same way, every bill in the center requires the assent of the president. And he may reserve certain bills for the reconsideration of the president. We will learn about that in the next following slides. Certain bills, okay, if it feels like, I cannot decide, that he reserves the bill for the president. And he also promulgates ordinances under Article 213. We talked about ordinance, right, of the president yesterday. So just in the same way, the governor also has the power to promulgate ordinance in the state. Okay, it will have the same effect as the state law, state act, and he can enact this act, he can declare this act when the parliament is not in session or whenever there's an emergency. And once he promulgates this ordinance, once he proclaims this ordinance, the law, the public will keep on following that law. And once the state legislative assembly election huise Rio Khan assemble hui jese, so within 6 weeks Rio will approve kora lagi and his council of ministers approve kora lagi. If not, the ordinance will cease to operate, khatam hui jabo. But if Rio approve krishuk kulibe, maximum 6 months jabo de ordinance, so maximum 6 months karne the act will be in force. So the governor, state legislature, the important fact, the governor forms an integral part of the state legislature. Now you understand. Now you understand the point. The financial and judicial powers. Annual budget. Annual budget is introduced with prior recommendation of the governor. Now, what is the annual budget? What is the official term that that I told you guys yesterday? Annual financial statement. Okay, the budget, the official name of the budget is AFI, Annual Financial Statement, which will contain all the expenditures of the next 1 year, and then good budget allocation to different ministries and so forth. Now, money bills require the governor's recommendation. Okay, just in the same way that money bills in the center requires the governor's recommendation. Very similar, and he controls the contingency fund of the state. Again, just in the same way that the president receives contingency fund of the fund in the union, the governor also receives contingency fund in the state. No, it varies from state to state. Okay, in the center we have 500 crores for the president, but in the state the contingency fund depends from state to state. Kumba to bishi thake, kumba to kumdi thake, na? And judicial powers. Okay, he can grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, and commutation under Article 161. Very similar to the president again. He can also pardon, he can also reprieve, he can also respite, he can also do remission and commutation under Article 161, but he cannot pardon a death sentence. It is only the president that can pardon a death sentence. Okay, remember that. Death sentence though, governor pardon grown up. It's only the president, but Pakito cover group. Now you look at Article 72 and Article 161. Okay, it covers all offenses against union laws. Right, for the president, union law, sentences by military courts and death sentences. Court martial, military courts. They have courts in the Indian Army, in the Indian Air Force, in the Indian Navy, and in this court, it is decided based on the rules and regulations of the army. So if a judgment is very harsh against a soldier given by their own military court, then the president can intervene and can pardon that person. Okay, Governor 161, strictly limited to offenses against state laws where the state's executive power extends. Okay, so Assam di issue to governor la Nagaland la governor ba pardon grown up state la majudi ase. And a very important note, the governor's pardoning power is narrower, which means a lot to kumdi ase than that of the president. A death penalty, like I said, the president can grant a full pardon for any. These are very important. Okay, for full pardon or any form of relief for a death sentence, the governor cannot pardon a death sentence, but he can suspend, remit, or commute it. Okay, death sentence so ek par garne suspend garna thakeu pare. Okay, and we talked about remission and commutation. Court martial, only the president has the authority to interfere with punishments or sentences handed down by a military court. The governor has zero authority over court martials. A very important point. The governor has no authority over court martials. Okay. Now, it's very similar to it's very much related to the way in which the powers are divided between the union and the state. When it comes to defense, it is a union lease. Okay, it is part of the union. It is fully controlled by the union, and court martial, armed forces, they come under the union. Right? It is very sensitive in the sense that it's about national security. So for court martial, it is the president that does it, whereas for the rest, the governor can do it except death penalty, and even in the death penalty, the governor can suspend, remit, or commute it. Okay. Discretionary powers of the governor. the governor's discretion. We talked about the president's discretion, right? The president's discretion. What were the president's discretion? We talked about vetoes. We talked about we talked about reservation of bill and so forth. Now here in the presentation, you can see constitutional and situational. Okay, these are the two types of governor's discretion. Okay, in which the governor can act based on his own discretion, based on his own judgment. The governor's discretion, he can reserve the bills for the president if he feels like the bill is not, good enough, or if the bill is a little dangerous, he can reserve the bills for the president. The state bill, okay, Rio ekta bill pass kushe, the governor did not like it. If the governor does not like it, then he will send it to the president. Ekbar check kuri sabi, and then you send me back. And he recommends president's rule under Article 356. Okay, when there was a conflict between the Kukis and the Métis in Manipur, it was the governor who recommended president's rule in the state. Okay, it is always a governor because central representative also. The governor ba ko state la situation iniga se, so president's rule must be implemented. Okay, so when president's rule is implemented, the state is directly under the control of the union. Okay. Now, seeking information from the Council of Ministers, anytime it is in the discretion of the governor to seek information from the Council of Ministers for any matter. That's another important point. And reserving bills for the president, there's another special section. When a bill is presented to the governor, right? When the bill is presented to the governor by the Council of Ministers, of course, headed by the Chief Minister. When the bill is presented, governor ke bill dile do, the governor may give assent, which is normal, just in the same way the president gives assent, withhold the assent, right? Even the president can do it. That's one of his vetoes, pocket veto. He can return the bill for reconsideration if it is not a money bill. Money bill that he cannot return it, okay? He must either sign or president ke patai deo paro. And he can reserve the bill for the president. Okay, these are the four options. He cannot send back money bill for reconsideration. The governor cannot send back money bill for reconsideration. It's the same for the president as well. Even the president cannot send the money bill back for reconsideration. That's a very important point. Okay, they're likely going to ask you in one of the next 3 to 4 preliminary examination statement-based question. This is a very interesting one. Important point: discretionary powers are one of the most debated aspects of the governor's office. Now, you look at the situational, he may act independently in exceptional constitutional circumstances. Now, there have been some cases, okay, in the past, wherein the governor used his discretionary powers. He also has the power to promulgate ordinance, enact an act, right? So, a lot of cases happened in the past, okay, even in Arunachal, even in Orissa and so forth. So governor batala discretion tala power ordinance making power use korigena laws continuously enact korena inika thakise. So they cannot do that, okay? They are not allowed to do that. Now, the governor versus the president. Just to clarify, I've already explained it. Constitutional head of the state government, of the union government. And he is appointed by the president. Please keep it. So the governor and the president, they have very similar functions. While the governor is the constitutional head of the state, it is the president who is the constitutional head of the center. And the president, election thage. Now, do not forget that, okay? Election thage, the president, there's election for the president, whereas for the governor, there's no election. And we talked about the pardoning powers, which are very similar, except the president can pardon a death sentence, whereas the governor cannot. Okay, And about money bill, right? It's the same for the president and the governor. And then the governor holds office during the pleasure of the president. Okay, it is the president who has the power to remove or to appoint the governor. If the president feels like the governor isn't fit, he can remove the governor at any point. It is the president who has a full authority over the governor's appointment. Now, tomorrow is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This Saturday we will be having a parliamentary session. Okay, a real life simulation of parliamentary meeting, and in that session we will divide the roles between the individuals here, the students here. We will divide the roles, and then we will try to have a parliamentary session. Okay. And in that parliamentary session, you will learn about how the central government conducts the session. State te to kushi jogor thage de rules kan iko follow no kore kushi kunba khota gro. Even last time Ajumpemo and MLA Ajumpemo and CL John, I don't know if you guys know the case about the elephants Canberra. Now we have the chief minister. And it's very similar to the Prime Minister of India, okay? Very similar to the Prime Minister of India. He is the real executive of the state. And every time I mention the word real, okay, it is not mentioned in the Indian Constitution. In the Indian Constitution, the constitutional head is the president, okay? But by political standards, we know, and everybody knows, that the Prime Minister is the real executive of the state. Okay, he is the head of the state government. By head of the state government, I mean the ruling party. Rio is the head of the state government. Okay, he is the leader of the ruling party, which is the NPF. And I think all of you knows, right, that last election Rio won the election with the NDPP as the majority, but the NDPP is no longer in existence. Rio decided that everyone should be part of the NPF party. Aro NDPP party do khatam korise tai. Aro tai purana de tai founding member ase do NPF la na. So in the 2018 election, and 2023 election majude TR Zeleng laga issue ekta olaise. I think yeah, 2013 to 2018. Okay, Rio Ekpar MP served college. He was a Lok Sabha MP, right? Then he realized that it was very difficult. It wasn't too easy. MP day. Maybe he didn't like it, and he wanted to get back into the state government and serve as a chief minister. But utu time the NPF la CM the DR Zeleng bhagi. And in the next election, 2018, Rio was all alone, and then NPF party to kick up takat thakishe. You know, Rio, right? He formed the new party, NDPP, and then he won the election. Okay, ini ka powerful as a Rio na. NPF 2018 the NPF DR Zeleng led by DR Zeleng and Tala members can be shit khatarnak thakishe. But 2018 he formed the new party, NDPP party, and then he won the state election. And in 2023 he continued with the NDPP, his new party, and he won the election. And 2023 bishide agreement natun luise, and then even the people from NPF, Aro Rising People's Party, RBP, Joel Naga, and so forth, taan sob ke NPF ta ani dise. And then now oppositionless government as it. There's no opposition to pressure the ruling party in the state. Okay, we are living in a kind of a dystopian society. Anarchy. It's very anarchic. Now, chief minister is usually the leader of the majority party. Up to that, I think all of you understand. Leader of the council of ministers, the principal advisor to the governor. Who is the principal advisor to the president? The prime minister, right? Now, who is the principal advisor to the governor? The chief minister. Okay, very similar to the president. So, president will relate so that it's easier for you guys to understand. Once you memorize, okay, first try to memorize the powers and functions of the president, and then come to governor, because President la 80% similarly governor lote ase. And try to understand the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha before moving to the state government. It's very similar, all the powers and functions, their constitutional position, and so forth. Now these are okay, we will first learn about the appointments and powers of the chief minister. He is appointed by the governor. Election khatam hua bishide nifiru ke kun appoint gore and his council of ministers ke it is the governor, and he is normally the leader of the majority party in the legislative assembly. MLA ko the member of legislative assembly aside Nagaland the MLA ko do. We don't have MLC, legislative council. Only a few states have it. We will learn about that later. Major powers of the chief minister, I've kept it very brief because he's very similar to the prime minister. Okay, he recommends appointment of ministers just in the same way the prime minister does, right? He allocates and reshuffles portfolios. Kunge minister diwo, kunge advisor diwo, right? The chief minister is the one that does it. Okay, he's the one that allocates the portfolios, and he also presides over cabinet meetings. Cabinet meeting la presiding officer do tayase. Okay, head cabinet meeting. Ministers kan ekla jama gurigina meeting lo adamde tayase. Okay, there are 12 ministers, cabinet ministers Nagaland de, aro udu leader do Rio ase. Now Rio be additional portfolio pukhide alag state do. I think I mentioned it in the pre-foundation class as well. Rio also holds the portfolio of finance department. Okay, so as our department, we are answerable to the finance department, we are answerable to the accountant general. So usually orders kiki kan ase finance department ba ki order ai udu Rio lahat pa ai do. So puisa do tai control na uto ase alag state do bisibak to finance minister ko ina bi thake, but yedi do PNAR and then finance do Rio puke. PNAR means personal and administrative reforms, which means they deal with the transfer and posting of administrative officers. So all the IAS officers, all the ESE, right? Even if you become ESE, who will handle your transfer and posting? Rio. Okay, and then I don't mean to say anything bad, but some political motive tagge na. So if Rio can control the transfer and posting of IAS officers and then the rest of the administrators, for example, TC Henok Kohima Laga na. I don't know who appointed him. I will not claim anything, but maybe, right? Maybe it might have been influenced by the ruling government, and then ruling government aro PNAR by transfer kursido Henok ke. So ki jane Henok to Rio ke respect bisi kuro pare, Rio la khota maniho pare na. Inya Rio bi kut jaga de TC kun howa lage, ADC kun howa lage, EAC kun howa lage, IS kan aya biside principal director, commissioner kun sopi tai control kore. He is the one that holds the PNAR portfolio as well as the puisa finance minister portfolio. But the rest of the portfolios DDC baki ministers kan na dai bi sob to bukyo na pare do. For example, PHE, we have Jacob Zimomi, we have the two deputy chief ministers, TR Zelem, who also holds the portfolio of National Highway, and we also have Wai Patan, who also holds the portfolio of Deputy CM as well as Home Department. Okay, and we have other members, KG Kenye, and then we have Kaito, Road and Bridges, and so forth. Now he advises the governor as well. Okay, the governor performs his role based on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Who is the leader of the Council of Ministers? The Chief Minister. He coordinates all departments. Sub department coordinate kore. Every department la minister kan takibo udon sob ani na coordination na. He represents state in intergovernmental matters, which is obvious. I don't need to explain that. The Council of Ministers remain in office as long as it enjoys the confidence of the Legislative Assembly. Now, just in the same way that in the center, the legislature can move a no confidence motion, okay, saying that they do not support or they do not believe, have faith in the present Council of Ministers. They will vote on it, and then majority vote lies up there. If the majority of the members of the Lok Sabha vote against the present Council of Ministers, all of them have to step down. And in the same way, the Council of Ministers remains in office as long as it enjoys the confidence of the Legislative Assembly. Let's say there are 60 Legislative Assembly members here, MLA, 60 MLA Nagaland ase. and then there are 12 ministers, right? There are 12 ministers, and other ministers 12, baki kiman ase 38, right? The 38 of them can vote, okay? And if the majority decides that they do not have confidence in the present council of ministers, they have to step down, okay? Council of ministers. The cabinet ministers, ministers of state, deputy ministers were applicable. No, this is the official term in the Indian constitution, which is why I've mentioned that cabinet ministers, ministers of state, and deputy ministers, okay? But here in Nagaland, we only have cabinet minister and advisors, okay? Advisors. Cabinet minister and advisors. Okay, advisors, they hold independent charge of various minor departments, and major departments can do cabinet ministers can hold. Like I said, KG Kenye, Kaito, Y Paton, and so forth. Utuando ministers can say. And then we have advisors, Hekani, Industries and Commerce, right? Tamjan Manba, Transport. Okay, all those advisors are Pongshi, Railway and Civil Aviation, and so forth. Advisors can do minor departments can say. And then major departments can do ministers can say. We only have minister and advisor here in Nagaland. Okay. Now the function very similar to again the council of ministers in the center. They aid and advise the governor. Governor get advice Korea, formulate state policies. They are the ones who prepare the bills. Okay, they are the ones who come up with ideas, allocation of funds and resources, and then they present it to the legislative assembly, and then the legislative assembly will pass it. Right, that was the process in the center as well. So same state TV inigase, and then they implement laws as well. So once the legislative assembly passes it, who will implement the law? Law implementation they do executive power do asudo. Executive the council of ministers asudo. They implement the law, which means, for example, who is the minister of health and family welfare? Konyak MLA, if there's anyone who knows the minister of health and family welfare, Paiwang, okay, Paiwang. So Paiwang be council of ministers te asudo. Rio tan iglot buwo. Aro let's say Paiwang bra he comes up with a bill, okay? Idea ekta as a bill as a insurance for farmers, medical insurance for farmers, and then it becomes an act, okay? It becomes an act, and once the act is passed, Paiwang implements the law, right? Since he is the head of the health and family welfare minister, every new office set up, everything pura pura tayo implement bro do. Yadi ito how to use the resources given by the central government, by the state government, for the implementation of that scheme. Okay, for medical benefits for the farmers. The Paiwang konyak ke let's say 20 crores diche. The Paiwang konyak pa yede office set up pro na new government post kulai diwo na aro renovate kuro kunba buildings kan na gari kiniwo. So Paiwang law opor di hujay the minister laga. Ini asbe. Health and family welfare law, mohan nisna government employees kando, we go all the way up till the director, the principal director, commissioner. Kumba department the commissioner thake, like motor vehicles commissioner Elias Yantan, okay, or let's say our principal director such Ren, na, sob alag alag thake. So director kando department chudi the director thake, aro department dangor kangido, like education department, treasures and accounts department dedo, principal director. Nijidi aro director duita thake mondo dangor department. So utukan la opor de do minister thake do. To minister la signature lage. Tahan eko corona bro without the signature of the minister. Okay. Recently my dad's friend was retired as the director of Agri. Okay, Yongchang. Okay, Yongchang. My dad's dear friend. So the uncle Yongchang ekta chutu ekta power tiller go mati till gole ito farming garni cholawole tai sign gona disido hole bi every document that I sign gona dia de minister la seal do asido agri la sorry advisor mathang okay to lothala MLA ase so iniga nisna ase MLA la oborde sob hui jay na ina so now the MLAs, the council of ministers, they implement laws. They administer departments, like I said, Paiwang Konyak administers the health and family welfare department. They coordinate government programs and so forth. Okay, now that's the council of ministers. And collective responsibility. I mentioned about collective responsibility in the pre-foundation class as well about this union DB. And it talks about no confidence motion. Okay, it's all about no confidence motion, which means the decision, the Council of Ministers, they act as one united body. Minister can 12 ministers in the Nagaland, in the Legislative Assembly, whenever they're having a meeting, overall, all the 60 MLAs are gathered together. These 12 ministers will never go against each other. That's called collective responsibility. We rise, we fall together. Okay, if there's disagreement between both the parties, they do it secretly. The rest of the members will take advantage of it and will pass a vote of no confidence. Okay, no confidence motion pass then they have to step down as Council of Ministers. Okay, so to keep the, to keep their post, to maintain their post, and to maintain the respect and everything, they have to be united as one body. Okay, the decisions of the cabinet bind all ministers, which means the cabinet for example, Paiwang Konyak health and family garne ekta decision banaise. Rest of the ministers kushi panai. They still have to agree. Okay. Before they do tan majid khota gro, but Legislative Assembly la session they do I support it. Na inyo gro like always united as one. Okay. Action ke support kare, action ke some best friend hui jai. If the minister must publicly support cabinet decisions, if the Legislative Assembly passes a no confidence motion, the entire council resigns. Okay, entire council resigns. So individual differences remain confidential. Okay, even if they have differences, it remains confidential. Now, this is the process diagram: the cabinet decision, ministerial unity, legislative confidence, continuation in office. Right. So if there's a cabinet decision, Paiwang Konyak decision ekta luise, and Paki ministers can pura they're united, okay, with Paiwang Konyak, then there is legislative confidence, right? Confidence in them, okay, that they are doing well, that they are united. The alag MLA can confidence takibo, and then tahan bi office they continue grow parbo. So that's the process diagram. Now state legislature de Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha nishna central legislature de. State legislature de be tuita type ase. The legislature might consist of the governor, like in the center. Legislature de be president hotai thakibo, governor thakibo. Alongside the governor, legislative assembly, which is equal to Lok Sabha, legislative council, which is equal to the Rajya Sabha. Okay, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha center de thaga nishna yadebi legislative assembly or legislative council ase. Okay. Now, why do we have only legislative assembly? Clearly, if you look at the center, okay, Rajya Sabha iman to nalagi do. They do not have financial powers, much financial powers, right? We talked about money bill. Money bill cannot be introduced in the Rajya Sabha. Now, Rajya Sabha ki garne rakemon Indian government, Indian Parliament there. If you look at it properly, check ro garne as there. Check ro garne as Lok Sabha do. Politicians can take up letra can be taken, kiki can be taken, laws can pass grow, but constitution amend grow gule, Rajya Sabha la vote be like it. So Rajya Sabha is kind of like ekta to keep a check on the ruling party. Rajya Sabha thake la se. But state te to bishi minor hui jai do. We already have the union government to protect us. Now why do we need another agency, another legislature? Okay, expenses can be bishi hui jai do. Salaries can diwa lage, gari can diwa lage na. Ito arne bishi jaga de nai legislative council do. Okay, we only have the legislative assembly, which is equivalent to the Lok Sabha. Now, what are the functions? Make state laws, obvious, very obvious. We have, and then he controls the legislature, controls the executive. Like I said, executive, council of ministers and all that, they're responsible to the legislature. Approve the state budget. Moi abni khan ke last time bhi koise the budget to approve kro lage legislature ba. Okay, and represents the people. Okay, they represent the people. Why? We vote for them. They are the representatives of the people. And key point: most states in India have unicameral. Uni means one, which means they only have legislative assembly. Okay, bicameral means two, right? Legislative council and legislative assembly. Most states in India have unicameral legislature, while a few have a bicameral legislature. Okay, so khali kunba states kan ekla bicameral ase. Now, legislative assembly first kurwa, and then we'll move to legislative council. the constitutional position. The Legislative Assembly is the lower house and the popular house of the state legislature. Okay. Lower house, kuna se Lok Sabha, center de. And in the same way, state de, Rajya Sabha se, Legislative Assembly as a Vidhan Sabha. Now, these are the features. Members are elected directly by the people. Members are elected directly by the people. Lok Sabha de, members are elected by the people. We talked about Subang Mern, right? He was directly elected by the people. But Phangnondo, he wasn't elected. He was chosen. He was elected by the Legislative Assembly. Okay. And in the same way, even Rajya Sabha members are elected by members of the. We talked about how the Rajya Sabha members are elected yesterday, right? I will not go into details now. Legislative Assembly elected directly by the people. In our assembly, we have two MLAs, Longling. We have the Tamlo and then we have the Longling constituency. There are two MLAs, whereas for the Konyaks, they have 9. Okay, and Mokshung they have 10, and Zonepoto they have 7, and Woka they have 5, Koima they have 6, Dimapur we have 5, and so forth. Okay, so next delimitation I will do. Next delimitation I will do. Certain changes that we can see is there will be an increase in seats in Longling. Konyak will remain the same because they have population. Okay, they have the highest population in the state, right? So they deserve. But Mokshung will see a reduction, a little bit, maybe 2 to 3 MLAs reduce over. Zona Potobi ekta noili duita reduce over 7 to maybe 6 to 5, and then Woka the 5 problem uthiwo. In always, okay, if you look at the Western tribes, okay, some kunpa napungcha ekta to alop tahan ke alop komdi dise ko na usually woka dage. Even when it comes to population job ratio, the first is top 1 and 2 Angami, and then the Aus, and then top 3 we have the Sumis, right? For every 100 people, there's 9 Aus, 9 Angamis with government jobs. For every 100 people, there's 7 point something people in government jobs for the Sumis. And the Pom, the Pochuris, they have again 7. And then the Pom and the Sangdam, they have around 6. And then the Lotas, they have 5. Okay. And then the rest of the state. So if you look at it, right, Lotas Kando, a lot of appointments, jobs can be by Levi. Example, Craig Raman, Bishidage, Tana, Lotan, Bishidage. Our Puilala, the Tan political power iman Taganai. The Utam de constitution delimit Kuradam de, they got only 5 MLAs. Whereas according to the population, they should be almost equal to the Sumis, the Aus, the Konyaks, and so forth. Okay, major tribe ekta. So these are some few changes that we're going to experience in the next delimitation. Now, Legislative Assembly, normal term 5 years, election, law bishide. When was the last election? 2023. When is the next election? 2028. Okay, so 5 years, minimum age 25 years for Lok Sabha as well as the Legislative Assembly, 25 years. It can be dissolved before completion of its term. It can be dissolved. Okay, there are certain cases in which the Legislative Assembly can be dissolved. Okay, one is the state emergency. The Legislative Assembly was dissolved in certain states. Okay, even Manipur during the Kuki and then the Métis kind of fight time there. So it can be dissolved. Okay, in certain exceptional cases. Now the presiding officer, like always, the speaker. Now next we have the Legislative Council. Legislative Assembly to bujoli easy as a, but Legislative Council, think of Rajya Sabha. Okay, Rajya Sabha, they cannot pass the money bill. Money bill tahan introduce corona pre in the upper house, the Rajya Sabha. In the same way, Legislative Council be bisibak the advisory role as a. Okay, if you can see, permanent house. In the center, we have the Rajya Sabha with the permanent house. Members retire after every 2 years, right? Members retire after every 2 years. So 1/3 of his members retire after every 2 years. So it keeps on going, okay? It keeps on going. And in the same way, Legislative Council be members retire after every 2 years. 1/3 members retire after every 2 years, and then year 4, 1/3 members. So let's say year 0 there, there's 60 members. In year 2, 1/3 members retire, which is 20 retire hodo. The 20 la election thake, the time the paki 40 do thake do. Na, aro 20 election hobo, 60 eklo jobo, year 4 to be another set of 20 election daganamde, 40 will still continue to be members of Legislative Council. Okay, which is why we call it a permanent body. Whereas in the Lok Sabha or Legislative Assembly, every 5 years, tan pura dissolve korde, aro natun election loi tan ek parba ahe na. So it is not a permanent body. But Legislative Council, in the same way as Rajya Sabha, they continue. Okay, they keep on running. They keep on running. So kina decide kro year 0 te tan sob ulai na kunba the 2 years, kunba the 4 years, kunba the 6 years. How did it first begin? Beginning there, na. So initially, when the Rajya Sabha was formed, okay, constituted, they did a lottery. Lottery kurse, aro total number of Rajya Sabha members majude tinta te phag kurse. Ina lottery uthaise, sob mano secret ballot de na lottery uthaise. Secret lot para lottery ulai na kunba 2 years paise, kunba 4 years paise, kunba 6 years paise. First day, Rajya Sabha first constitute kuradam de. Iniga hoigina 1/3 members retired after 2 years. After 4 years, after 6 years. And that's how the process, it was made possible, okay? And the maximum strength cannot exceed 1/3 of the Legislative Assembly, which means in Nagaland, for example, if we were to have a Legislative Council, 1/3 to kiman hobo? 1/3, 33%, or 1/3. 1 out of 3 the 1 out of 3, which means we have 60 MLAs now. So 1/3 means 20, right? 20 Legislative Council members thakiwa lage. Utu par nokro lage 1/3. Utu as that's the rule. So Legislative Council is always going to be smaller than Legislative Assembly. Now this is the composition of the Legislative Council. How the members are elected. Okay, how the members are elected. Now Hangnondo Rajya Sabha do Hangnondo kun ba elect kurse, MLA kan ba elect kurse. We talked about that, right? But here election de do composition of the Legislative Council, which means out of, let's say, 100, right? Out of 100, let's say there's 100 MLC, okay, members of Legislative Council. Total 1/3 to 1/3 means around 33% do it is elected or nominated, okay. Voters kan kun thakiwa, members of local authorities, municipalities, na ward councillors kan vote diwo, municipal corporation kan diwo, dangor city de do municipal corporation thake, and then chutu jaga de do panchayat thake. Moando village council hobo do. The village council or municipal council tahan la members kan ba vote digina 33% of the Legislative Council members to ulai diwo. Then the same system of vote ase single transferable vote, STV, and another 33% will be 1/3 will be members of the Legislative Assembly, MLA kan ba ulai diwo. Okay, so out of 100, 33 nisna do village council, municipal council ba ulai diwo, vote diwo. Another 33% do MLA kan ba ulai diwo. 1/12 means 100 divided by 12, which is approximately around 8 point something. So around 8.8 of them will be voted by the graduates. Okay, all of us, I think all of us are eligible to vote for 8 of them with at least 3 years on the electoral roll. 3 years electoral roll that I go like as a voter, huh? And it will be STV. So if, for example, candidate charta ase and you are a graduate, how would you vote? By order of preference, okay? Top 1 do utu hobo, top 2 do utu hobo, top 3 do utu hobo, top 4 do utu hobo. Ikona, digina, direct didiwo. That's STV. Now, another 1/6, which means 100 divided by 6 kiman hobo? Around 16, okay? 16 point something. So, governor, but directly 16 of them nominate kuruwa. Our governor ke kile dishe gule do, it is generally considered that governor is someone who is very capable. Right, so he will appoint someone with special knowledge in literature, science, art, cooperative movement, or social service. Palba manungan tayo nominate ko. Okay, so iniga voting system do iniga se. Now I don't know if you guys want to memorize all that, but you guys can memorize that if the need arises. Okay, but UPSC dito lagyo, but NPSC dito ito memorization di man na lagyo. But you can just memorize the stakeholders. We have the village council, the municipal council, right? And then we have the MLAs, we have the graduates, we have the teachers. Okay, yeah, I forgot to explain the teachers with at least 3 years experience. Again, 112. 112 means around 8 teachers kanbra what you were there. So, paldo balas na the way in which the legislative council members are chosen. So this is how it's chosen. Okay, I hope it's clear the method of choosing the. And then we have the legislative assembly versus legislative council, which is very similar to Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. One is lower house. Lok Sabha nishna ase legislative assembly the lower house, legislative council the upper house ase Rajya Sabha. And directly elected, indirectly elected. Why directly elected legislative assembly? One by vote did. But indirectly means agiri ko nishna legislative council do different graduates and then teachers and so forth. And 5-year term permanent house can be dissolved, cannot be dissolved. Minimum age 25 years. Same with Lok Sabha, 25 years. Minimum age 30 years. Same with Rajya Sabha. Greater legislative powers is very obvious. Limited legislative powers. Okay. Now, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, very similar to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. He presides over House proceedings. Okay, that's another very obvious. We talked about that. And he maintains order and discipline in the assembly sessions. Mala assembly, legislative assembly meeting there. Order and discipline. If anyone, all of kota pishi kurusugule do order na chupoyu ina ekta decides procedural matters. Kina proceed kuruwa the meeting speaker ba and then protects legislative privileges. Legislative privilege means everyone has the equal chance to give their opinion, right? To propose bills and acts. So manugi equal chance. For example, kung pa kota grese katina alak manura kota grese do. Tai kubo amni puijawi, let him speak. I give him 5 minutes. These are legislative privileges. Okay, it exercises a casting vote in case of a tie. I think we talked about that as well. The Speaker of Lok Sabha ki kure so manu vote dia bishide if there's a tie same equal vote as a speaker aina vote de do utu nishnai legislative assembly debi speaker ba vote diwo. Okay, in case of a tie, don't forget that. Again, who certifies whether a bill is a money bill? It's a speaker in the center. State TV speaker. Okay, who is our current speaker? Does anyone know our present speaker of legislative assembly? Sharingan Longomar. Okay, Sharingan Longomar is the one who decides whether a bill is a money bill or not a money bill. Okay. Session of the state legislature. Now, these are the types of sessions. It's very similar to what we studied yesterday, right? The budget session, the monsoon session, winter session. I will not be explaining that. Not more than 6 months gap thagiwa lage. Okay, and then the governor's role. I explained earlier, he summons the legislature, he prorogues the house, okay, prorogation, and he dissolves the legislative assembly. Summon, prorogate, dissolve, utu tindala, meaning, kina bujo wale, let's say there's a budget session, okay, budget session he will summon, okay, summon the legislature for a budget session, and once the budget session ends, he will prorogate it, which means the budget session will come to an end. That's called prorogation. And dissolve after the end of the 5-year term, he will dissolve it so that the new election can be conducted. Okay, these 3 terms, that's what it means. Now, legislative procedure in the state legislature. Ordinary bill. Ordinary bill is any bill that is not a money bill, that is not a ordinary bill. What is ordinary bill? We discussed about that yesterday, right? Not a financial bill, not a money bill. Ordinary bill, I guess, I hope all of you now understand what is ordinary bill. It may be introduced in either house where there is a legislative council. In the case of Nagle, just legislative council, okay? We talked about the first, second, committee stage, third reading. I don't need to explain that. We talked about that yesterday. Same as the center. And passed by the other house if there is a legislative council. Since we do not have a legislative council, what do? After the third reading, we directly send it to the governor, okay? And the governor will give his assent, and after which the bill will become an act, okay? In states with only a legislative assembly, the bill is passed by the house before being sent to the governor directly. Money bill in the state legislature. A money bill deals exclusively with taxation, state borrowings, CFI, contingency fund, appropriation of money. Very similar to center. Okay, I will not be explaining money bill. It can be introduced only in the legislative assembly. Center Devi, it can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha, right? So in the state, it can be introduced only in the legislative assembly. And it requires prior recommendation of the governor, always, every single time. Governor la recommendation lagi, okay? And the speaker, Sharingan Longomar, he decides whether a bill is a money bill, okay? Now, money bill flow, it is introduced in the assembly, legislative assembly, passed by the legislative assembly, sent to the council, legislative council, and just in the same way, the bill is sent from Lok Sabha to Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha only has 14 days, right, to send the bill back. If Rajya Sabha doesn't send the bill back, what happens? The bill is deemed to have been passed, okay? Automatically, yes, ko is na ho jai. 14 days majude. Khata nai gulega. And governor's assent. Very simple process. Okay, once it is passed by the assembly, sent to the council needs to return it within 14 days, and even if they don't return it within 14 days, the bill is deemed to have been passed, and then they send it to the governor. Okay, so legislative council in power 9. Now, budget and financial procedure. Annual financial statement, the budget of the state, presentation of the budget, first step, general discussion before the legislative assembly, okay? Rio Ra budget, since he's a finance minister, he's the one who presents the budget, okay? In the center, we have the finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, who presents the budget. But here in the state, it is Rio, okay, who presents the budget, and then general discussion tagiwo. After which, voting on demand for grants. What are demand for grants? These are demands made by different departments. Okay, RD department, Health and Family Welfare department, grants demand guru. All of them will vote on it, and then appropriation bill. The bill, key bill as a appropriation bill is a bill that grants the Council of Ministers the right to take money out from the Treasury, consolidated fund. Okay, of the state. Yadi pa pusa ulao karne appropriation bill bana there's an appropriation bill, and once signature by the appropriation bill rather, it gives them the right to take money out from the consolidated fund of the state, okay, and it becomes a finance bill, okay. So the governor's role, budget though, it is always presented with the governor's recommendation, okay. The budget authorizes expenditure from the consolidated fund of the state. Now we will talk about the High Court. We're nearing the end of our today's session. Please be patient. The High Court is the highest judicial authority in the state. Very obvious, right? Very obvious. The High Court, it protects fundamental rights. I talked about the fundamental rights. Only two courts can issue writs for the protection of fundamental rights, okay? The High Court and the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court protects fundamental rights. The High Court protects fundamental rights. The High Court also supervises subordinate courts like the District Court, and it also exercises judicial review, right? Any act passed by the state government is subject to judicial review, okay? They will review it and see if it is good for the people or bad for the people, and they can strike down any bill passed by the state government if it feels like the bill goes against the principle of the Constitution. Is the highest appellate court in the state, which means highest appellate. What is appellate? An appeal, right? The highest that we can appeal. Up to which court can we appeal? All the way from village council, maybe going to Tobashi Court in the DC office. Tobashi Court DC office customary law lies up there. Tobashi Court, it's meant for customary laws. We discussed that, right, in our Saturday roundtable discussion. Tobashi Court, we can appeal it to the District Court. If it's a civil case, we can take it up to the district judge, and if it's a criminal case, we can take it up to the sessions judge. And if you're not satisfied, we go to the high court. So it's the highest appellate authority that we can appeal at, okay? So it interprets state laws as well. Every time there's a confusion about what the laws mean, state laws, it is the high court that interprets it, okay? Now, composition and appointment of high court judges. The composition, chief justice and other judges, okay? So the number of judges vary from state to state. Now, appointment by the president will appoint him. And qualifications, citizen of India, that's one very obvious point. And then advocate 10 years as an advocate or judicial officer, 10 years only then you can serve as a judge of a high court. So 10 years of experience lagi. Now in consultation with appointment by the president, obvious, but advice like Chief Justice of India, the governor of the state, the Chief Justice of the High Court. Okay, the Chief Justice of India, the governor of the state, Chief Justice of the High Court. The High Court where he's going to be appointed. Okay, not all the high courts. It's a high court where the person is going to be appointed. So then on, it is appointed by the president. Okay. Now jurisdiction of the High Court. We talked about original jurisdiction, which means directly High Court de key cases can jawab bare. Original jurisdiction. That's the meaning of original jurisdiction. Specified constitutional and civil matters. Okay, specified constitutional and civil matters. There are some civil matters that are very grievous, and also constitutional matters. Utuan garne original jurisdiction. We can directly go to the High Court. Like I said, Murki Chor Hoilido, Jawan Aprobo, High Court directly. Okay. There are certain specified constitutional and civil matters for which we can approach the High Court directly. And appellate jurisdiction, appeals from subordinate courts, any kind of appeals from the district court, the Tobashi court and so forth can go up to the High Court as an appeal. And writ jurisdiction, we talked about habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, quo warranto. These are the 5 writs, okay, through which the High Court or the Supreme Court enforces the fundamental rights, protects the fundamental rights. So they can issue writs as well for the enforcement of fundamental rights. Supervisory jurisdiction, very obvious. I don't need to explain it. It supervises the subordinate courts. It is a court of record. Okay, permanent judgments, court of record. It is so. Like I said, how do we interpret Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, right to life and personal liberty? Inside it, there's a lot of rights, right? And all these rights were introduced, all these rights were given by the High Court, Supreme Court, okay? So it's a court of record. These records are used, okay, to interpret the Indian Constitution. And original jurisdiction, yes, that's it. Now, writ jurisdiction of the High Court, I will not be explaining it. We already discussed that. Now, independence of the High Court, very briefly. Security of tenure. Okay, security of tenure. Their tenure is secured. It's directly mentioned in the Indian Constitution. So, simply because the state government doesn't like the High Court judge, they cannot reduce his tenure. Okay, the tenure is permanent. It is mentioned in the High Court. Okay, so this, and then fixed salary and service conditions, that is also mentioned in the Indian Constitution. They cannot change it. Rioba High Court la judge kushi banai do tala salary gomdi koro na bro. The state, they cannot fix salaries and allowances for the High Court judges. Okay, ala khan mon garni do NBSC khan pass ho kan kide reduce koro increase koro tala kushi ase mon la salary uthai dio guli bi tan uthai dio namai dio guli namai dio, but High Court judge do Constitution by decide kore de. So that's another way of protecting the High Court judges. So it comes under independence. Very difficult removal procedure. Like I mentioned, special majority for High Court judges as well as Supreme Court judges require a special majority. Just in the same way, special majority is required for constitutional amendment. So it's a very difficult procedure to remove the High Court judges. Okay. Now, administrative independence. Administering their own court, right? The appointment, the transfer, the posting, everything though, court by not the government. So now power of judicial review, they can review any act passed by the Indian Parliament, right? Or any act passed by the state. So Nagaland de ki law pass kurse bolibi judiciary ga review kuro. The which is a high court of the Nagaland state government is the Guwahati High Court, okay? But we have a high court bench, Guwahati High Court bench in Kohima. And importance, you guys can cover it by yourself. Now, these are the high courts in Northeast region. That's just an additional information that I prepared for you guys. Now, Manipur, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Sikkim, Tan Charjunga, they have their own separate high courts. Okay. Back then, there was only one high court, Guwahati High Court. But in 2003, utan ulaise. 2013. Now, Guwahati High Court to Guwahati Assam de ase. But Nagaland, Mizoram, or Arunachal Pradesh, uti tinta la High Court to Guwahati High Court ase. So these four states, Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal, Guwahati de ase. High Court to. Aro we have a bench, okay, permanent benches, Kohima de ase. So High Court bench Kohima gole do, Kohima de High Court nai de. Guwahati la bench ase. So always know that. Now Advocate General, legal advisor to the state government. Okay. Center de ki ase? Attorney General. Just in the same way, we have Advocate General in the state, appointed by the governor. Just in the same way, AGI is appointed by the president. The Advocate General is appointed by the governor. He must be qualified to become a judge of a high court. Judge of a high court, what are the qualifications? He must be a citizen of India, right? He must be a judicial officer or been an advocate for at least 10 years. So this is the condition for Advocate General as well. Okay. Chief Legal Advisor to the state government. I've explained that. It represents the state in legal matters. I've explained that. Advises the government to unconstitutional advices, issues. Okay, so rights, he may participate in the proceedings of the state legislature but cannot vote. So is Advocate General member of the state legislative assembly? The answer is no, okay, but he can take part. Just in the same, I asked you guys the same question, right? Is the Attorney General member of the Indian Parliament? No, but he can take part in the proceedings of the state legislature, the Advocate General, but he cannot vote. Okay, he can only take part because he also needs to observe, right? Observe karo. Only then he will understand kuntu wrong as kuntu right as utala hisab de legally guide karo paro na and all that. Then we have the subordinate courts. Okay, High Court la niche we have the district courts. Aro district court la niche we have the civil and the criminal court. Okay. Now, look at the civil and criminal court. Now, civil case, you know all kinds of civil case, right? And non-criminal cases are called civil case. Okay. So, criminal courts, yadedo sessions judge ase, civil court edo district judge ase. Now, the district judge and sessions judge same manu as de. Same manu. We call it the district and sessions judge. Ina mate. District de ektai thake utula head. Aro taira head kore. Both the district court as well as the civil court as well as the criminal court utu be same office ase de. Ekta same building thake. Oh kunba jaga de Delhi khange to alag alag thake because man dangor city ase but Nagaland de do civil or criminal court to same ase. Every district ase de. Aro every district de district judge and then sessions judge ase with the same person. Don't forget that, okay? Now, district judge and sessions judge, same person as a district judge or sessions judge. Taila niche de tuita officers as a chief judicial magistrate and civil judge senior. Aru dala niche de civil judge junior and so forth. But up to this, you need to know civil judge and then chief judicial magistrate. Okay, is it understandable? Civil judge alag manu ase, chief judicial magistrate alag ase. But district judge and sessions judge same ekta ase. Okay. So and then in the district court we have the special courts like family courts and so forth. Okay, we will learn about family courts and district and sessions judge here appointed by the governor. Okay, that person is appointed by the governor. He acts as a district judge. He also acts as a sessions judge for criminal matters. Now importance, I'll skip that. You know it. It's same as High Court and Supreme Court. Now, independence of subordinate judiciary, very similar. High Court exercises administrative control, not the state government. Okay. For the district judge, independent recruitment procedures. Again, High Court administers the recruitment procedures, security of tenure, and separation from the executive, promotion based on judicial service rules. Promotion B, based on judicial, so very similar to the independence of High Court, the independence of Supreme Court. So I will skip that. Constitutional provision, Article 50, separation of judiciary from executive. Okay, it's present in, it's applied. That principle is applied, so it is separated from the executive. How is it separated from the executive? Like I said, administrative control everything. Rio can equal control naide district court. It's a high court that controls everything. And who controls the high court? Supreme Court. And who controls the Supreme Court? No one controls the Supreme Court, right? Okay. You can call it tribunals or tribunals. I like to call it tribunals. The tribunals are specialized judicial bodies established to decide specific categories of disputes. Now, it's similar to a court, but only for a specific purpose. For example, we have to get Central Administrative Tribunal, okay, and National Green Tribunal, Armed Forces Tribunal, and Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. So, in the CAT, administrative matters can for example, if you were posted in, let's say you were posted in Noklak, okay, you were posted in Noklak, but because the MLA did not like you, he transferred you to Tuinsang. Okay, and then again the Tuinsang MLA did not like you, and then the Tuinsang MLA transferred you to Wokha simply for being too honest. It happens to some people, and you can approach the Central Administrative Tribunal. Why am I being, transferred from this place to that place? Like, give me the reason, right? It's unfair, right? They're torturing me, right? So you can appeal that in the Central Administrative Tribunal. Now, one very important point to note, with the CAT do na state government employees kan mala service rules kan alag ase. It's just for the central employees working in the state or wherever. So central employees kan garne ase. That's another very important point. National Green Tribunal, any kind of environmental matters, you go to NGT. And Armed Forces Tribunal, again, it is for the armed forces, not for us. Apni army join rusugule da apni garne be HED do AFT do ho. And IT&T, again, income tax, we're all exempted from income tax, right? Nagamano. We hardly file income tax. The only people who file income tax are those people who wish to have certain benefits, such as if you file income tax, then you can withdraw a cash of more than 20 lakhs, okay, without interest. So they charge an interest rate of 3% per 3% beyond 20 lakhs if you don't have income tax filed. So 20 lakhs opportunity na lagyo na ita kanilo. So income tax file no pre na. So 20 lakhs cash la opportunity, and so forth. There are certain other benefits as well. Loan can loan mun jai gule do. Income tax file or file grocery gule do. You don't even need to show your income proof. Income tax filing itself is an income proof, and so forth. So, but Nagaland didn't know it. But anything related to income tax, okay, you will go to the IT and ITAT court. Okay, why do we set up these courts? Because High Court probably so handle grown up, right? District Court probably so handle grown up. Cases to tamadam ahena. So it was a specialized courts can banai dishe. Okay. Now advantages: faster disposal, expert adjudication. Again, expert. Nicho la field nicho expert hoda. To be as a reduced burden on regular courts. Now we have the president versus the governor. Just 5 to 10 minutes more, okay? These are the differences. You can go back home and go through it. I've already explained. Prime Minister versus Chief Minister for your convenience, for you guys to go through, revise. Parliament versus state legislature as well. I've given it. You can go through it. And these are some important constitutional articles that, I would urge all of you to memorize, to research on. Okay, not to memorize, sorry, to research on. And landmark judgments. These are the 3 landmark judgments related to Part 6 of the Indian Constitution that you guys, if you guys wish to know. Okay, these are the 3 important ones that I've picked out for you guys. In the 1974, the court clarified the court clarified that the governor acts on the aid and advice of the council of ministers. Okay, it properly clarified. And in the 1994 case, SR Pomey versus Union of India, it talked about the limited misuse of Article 356, which is state emergency. Kushuje governor by emergency declare gona parabo. Okay, there needs to be a very serious reason to declare emergency. The Utudla judgment as it strengthened federalism, right? Division of powers. And in the 2016 Napam Rebia versus Deputy Speaker, it clarified the governor's discretionary powers. Like I said, the governor cannot use his discretionary powers according to his wish, according to his subjective judgment. He should make an objective judgment, okay, and he should use his discretionary powers objectively. So it's a case that happened in Arunachal. You can research on that if you guys want, not necessary. But it was the case, Napam Rebia versus Deputy Speaker case in 2016, that the court officially clarified that the governor cannot use his discretionary powers in a subjective way. Okay, he must have an objective stand. And this is the PY examination focus. Very important. Governor's discretionary powers, very popular topic. And collective responsibility, legislative assembly versus legislative council, money bill, high court jurisdiction, and so forth. Please try to cover all this. Yeah, that's it.